proffer of other evidence. And what we mentioned was that the defendant failed to include the last portion of the quote, which states, this is precisely why Denny requires that all three be shown before evidence of a third-party perpetrator is admitted at trial. Wilson further states that Denny is firm, however, that the three factors be present, implying that opportunity and direct connection have distinct meaning. Thus, the fact that a person with a motive to commit the crime is present at the crime scene is not enough to satisfy both opportunity and direct connection. So it was specifically litigated to Artez, but it is the defendant's burden to set forth third-party liability people, which they wish to have the court consider before the trial date or before the jury hears any testimony as related to those witnesses. And that has not been done with the exception of the previous Artez-Williams litigation.
Okay. Mr. Wilman?
I submit to you that I am not offering third-party liability evidence. I think you can probably best determine this issue when Eric Mahomes takes a witness. Because I'd imagine the state will elicit from Mr. Mahomes where the drugs that were found in the apartment came from.
No, we won't.
No, we won't.
And I guess that's a decision the state makes with regards to inquiries this jury may have about the source of that cocaine. I trust I will be allowed to ask Mr. Mahomes whether Kristopher Torgerson was the source of that cocaine.
Well, Your Honor, since he's my witness, I'll make any arguments as it relates to that. First, I don't think that would be appropriate unless they can establish a foundation that he knows where the drugs came from first off. And secondly, whether or not the defendant was the source of those drugs or not, I don't see the relevance of it. I just don't see the relevance of where the drugs came from. I don't see why that's relevant.
Well, I would think if the defendant wasn't involved in drug trafficking as a source, I think that might provide a defense to the homicide charge. I just guess I'm a little bit troubled on the limited inquiries here. I really can't make a greater record than I have of what I'm trying to accomplish here, which is give the jury some background about what everybody was doing. It concerns me that this jury's not going to be aware of the source of the ounce and a half that was delivered on Saturday, October 9th. I would certainly think it fair as a right to present a complete defense that I can at least establish to this jury that this defendant who's charged with the homicide of Stephanie Lowe wasn't the source of that cocaine. I think that's certainly fair. I mean, people may think, well, that doesn't disprove him, it doesn't show he doesn't have a motive.
Okay, well, hold up on that, but on the other line of question you had today, if you should have had a Denny ruling in advance of this, you did not do so, and absent that, it's just not relevant. So, any other witnesses until we get this established, it's not going to be relevant to go into questions as to who they know may be dealers or who may have sold.
I understand that.
Okay, so are we set then?
Yes, Judge.
Okay, bring the jury in, please. Who's your next witness?
Cassie Miller, Your Honor. You all set?
May we see it? State and proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. The state would call Cassie Miller, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Raise your right hand. Please tell us whether the testimony what you give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth will help you God. Thank you.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
Cassie Miller,
Could you spell your name for the court recorder?
Kassiemiller,
And Cassie, where do you live?
Florida.
And where were you living as of October of 2010?
I believe South Carolina.
Okay. Were you in the Wausau area sometime during October of 2010?
Yes, I was.
And did you have a residence or were you staying with friends at that time?
Staying with friends.
Did you know, as of October of 2010, Stephanie Lowe?
Yes, I did.
How did you know Stephanie?
She was a newer friend that I met through acquaintances.
So you met her recently, short time before October?
Within a couple months, probably.
And how good a friend were you with Stephanie at that point in time?
Like I said, it was a newer friend, so we weren't like best of friends, but it was someone that I would hang out with.
And were you familiar with the apartment that Stephanie Lowe was living in as of October 10th, 2010?
Yes, I was.
Had you been to that apartment?
Yes.
And were you familiar with the entrances or the entrance to that residence?
I know of one entrance
Okay, where was that?
on the side street.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Cassie, I'm showing you what has been marked for identification previously as exhibit number 46. Does that look like that entrance that you were talking about?
I don't recall by the picture at this time. It was
Okay.
very long ago.
All right, that's fine. Now, Cassie, on October 9th, 2010, did you see Stephanie Lowe?
Yes,
Where did you see her?
at her house.
And do you recall approximately when you went to her house to see her?
Evening time, 9, 10. I'm not sure exactly.
All right. Sometime around 9 or 10 p.m.?
Yes.
I'm sorry, is that a
Yes.
yes? All right. Thank you. And was there anybody else there when you got there?
There were people leaving when I got there, I believe.
And who was that?
I know one of them was Trenton Phillips. I do not know the other.
Okay. And so they were leaving as you were getting there?
I believe so.
Okay. And did you stay there for a period of time?
I was there for a little while. I don't remember how long.
I'm sorry?
I was there for a little while. I don't remember how long.
Okay. And Trenton Phillips, did he come back?
I believe he came back, and then they left, Trenton and Stephanie, and then I left at the same time, separately.
Now, do you recall if your phone number as of October 10th of 2010 and October 9th was 715-846-0652?
Yes.
And so that's the phone number. Was that a cell phone?
Yes.
Okay. And that's the phone number you had at that point.
Yes.
And did you have some contact with Stephanie that evening by phone or text?
Yes.
And was that something that happened off and on that evening?
It was.
Your Honor, at this point in time, I'm going to move the admission of Exhibit 221. This is a stipulation that was entered into between the parties. It covers a number of things, one of which are the cell phone records of a number of individuals. The one that I care about at this point in time is Stephanie Lowe. It also contains the cell phone records relating to Eric Mahomes, the cell phone records of the defendant, and the cell phone records of Andrea Wadinsky.
Mr. Wilman?
So stipulated.
Okay, that may be received.
Right. And again, there are a number of other stipulations, but those are the ones I'm talking about at this point in time, and we can deal with the other stipulations as they come in. So, Cassie, I'm going to put up on the screen here some of those cell phone records, and zoom in here a little bit. So let's take a look. I'm going to get another copy of this that I've got, and because I can give you specific times a little easier. Here it is. All right, so we're on page, it appears to be page 17 of 26. You can't see that right at the moment, but that's what we're talking about. Do you see a series of what appear to be text messages from between 715-212-9255? It's towards the bottom of that page. And your number at that time, 715-846-0652?
Yes.
All right, and those appear to be this is a military time. The first one appears to be at 20:39, which would have been 8:39 p.m., correct?
Yes.
All right, and that's a text from Stephanie to you, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then right after that, it appears there's a text from you to Stephanie, correct?
Yes.
All right. And then another reply text from Stephanie to you, right?
Yes.
All right. And then skipping down a couple two entries down, appears to be another text from you to Stephanie, correct?
Yes.
Move to the next page of that exhibit. So now we're on, and again, so we reference page 18 of 26, correct?
Yes.
All right, so let's go down about this appears to be the 7th entry, appears to be a phone call from you to Stephanie at approximately 9, what appears to be 9:10, 21:10, correct?
Yes.
All right. And that was about 21 seconds?
Yes.
Do you think, was that phone call before or after you were at Stephanie's residence?
That was probably right before.
Okay, so you called as you were going over there?
Correct.
Okay, and talked to her and would have been basically, hey, I'm coming over?
Probably.
Okay. And then if we go down a little bit farther, it appears there's another phone call at approximately, it appears 22:27, which would be 10:27, so about just before 10:30 from you to Stephanie, correct?
Yes.
All right. And that appears to be a 53-second call?
Yes.
All right. And then going down a little farther, there appear to be a couple text messages between the two of you. First one from you to first one from Stephanie to you, and then one from you to Stephanie. Right here?
Yes.
You see those? And those appear to be, again, at about 10:40 p.m., just after 10:40 p.m., correct?
Yes.
And then it appears a couple of very, very short phone calls down towards the bottom of the page from you to Stephanie, correct? And those appear to be about, let's see, maybe we don't have it down far enough. There we go. Those appear to be at about 11:30, correct?
Yes.
Now, did you talk to Stephanie again that evening?
Yes.
All right. And approximately when did you talk to her? If you recall.
I don't recall.
Was that a phone call from Stephanie to you?
I believe she did call me at some point
And here, we'll take a look at this is page 19 of 26. And if we go down to here, it appears to be a phone call from Stephanie to you, correct?
Yes.
All right. And that appears to be at about 12:32, correct?
Yes.
And would that be about the time that you would expect that phone call between yourself and Stephanie was?
Yes.
All right. And it appears, if you take a look at that phone call was for approximately 105 seconds, correct?
Yes.
Actually, 106, I think I read it wrong. All right. Now, in that phone call, was there some discussion about your coming over to Stephanie's apartment that night?
Yes, there was.
And she asked you to come over?
Yes.
And you said you would?
Yes.
Was there some discussion between the two of you about approximately when you would come over or when you would come over that night?
Yes, I told her I would come over like after bar.
And did you go there?
Yes.
And do you recall approximately when you called, or when you got there?
After bar, so a little after 2.
Okay. And did you make any phone calls to her to Stephanie's number as you were going over there?
I would have called her on my way, yes.
Okay. And so phone calls again would help to pin down approximately when you went.
Yes.
And you were calling again from that 846-0652 number, correct?
Correct.
All right, so if we take a look, this is page, for reference, 20 of 26 here. We see a call from your number, correct?
Yes.
All right, and that appears to be at approximately 2:16 a.m., correct?
Yes.
Did you receive any answer when you made that phone call at 2:16 a.m.?
No, I did not.
And did you get to her residence?
I did.
What did you do when you got to the residence?
I went to the door. There was no answer.
Do you know if the door was open or closed?
It was closed.
Do you know if it was locked or unlocked?
It was locked.
And what did you do to try to get a hold of Stephanie when you get to the door first?
I called her again. No answer.
Did you try knocking at the door first, or?
Of course.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Okay. Any answer?
No.
By the way, where did you park at that point in time?
On the side street that the door was on. Like, I
On
don't know
the
the name
street.
of the street.
Okay. On the street rather than in the driveway.
Correct.
So you didn't receive an answer when you knocked. What happened then? What do you do?
I waited to hear back from her for a little while in my car.
Okay. Did you call her a number of times?
I believe so.
I think, in fact, the records show you called, looks like 4 total times.
Yes.
And did you ever receive an answer on any of those phone calls?
No.
They all appear to be very, very short, 2-3 seconds.
Yes.
What did you do then after you didn't receive any answer from her?
I eventually left.
And went somewhere else?
Correct.
Stayed somewhere else for the night?
Correct.
After you left on the evening of October 9th of 2010, when you left when Stephanie and Trenton Phillips left, did you ever see Stephanie Lowe again?
No.
Outside of the phone conversation you had with her at about 12:30, did you ever talk to her again?
No.
Do you recall, and if you don't, that's fine, did you look to see if the lights were on or off in the apartment at that time?
I don't recall.
All right. Thank you. I don't have any other questions. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Ms. Miller, I'm clear you only knew Ms. Lowe as of October 2010 for a couple of weeks.
I don't remember exactly, a couple weeks, a couple months. Either way, it was a short period of time.
You knew for a longer period of time and better Eric Mahomes.
I don't know that I actually knew Eric personally, outside of acquaintances.
Okay. Do you remember speaking to a detective or a couple of detectives by the name of Mary Wogernies and Detective Holtz
Correct.
Shortly after the incident in question?
Correct.
Do you remember saying that you knew Eric Mahomes better than Stephanie, or you didn't say that?
I don't recall saying that. I believe he was in jail when I knew Stephanie.
Right, that's not what I'm asking.
I didn't know him prior to that. I knew of him through her, I believe.
Oh, so
As far as I remember, it was that he was never a friend. I knew acquaintances.
did you ever meet him personally?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Okay. So we talked about some of these telephone exchanges you had with Ms. Lowe, and eventually you found yourself in her apartment, right?
Yes.
And when you were there at her apartment, were you aware that there was crack cocaine present?
I don't know if I would have known there was any at that time. It's not something we discussed when I would go there.
Do you remember telling Detective Wogernies and Detective Holtz that you were aware crack cocaine was in the premises?
I may have told them that I was aware that she was involved in such things. I don't believe that I told them I knew for a fact there was some at her residence.
Did you know that she was involved in such things while Eric Mahomes was in custody?
Yes.
Which would have been around the time you were visiting them that weekend, right? Because he was in custody at that time.
Well, I don't know how long he was in custody for, so I don't have a time frame for that particular matter.
Okay. You didn't involve yourself in any crack cocaine trafficking. We know that, right?
Not at all.
And you didn't for a reason, because you thought it was dangerous, right?
Right,
I
that's...
somehow object as to her reasoning. I don't think it's relevant.
Sustained.
I ask the answer be stricken.
It'll be stricken.
Do you remember talking about drug trafficking with Detective Wergensee and how trafficking in crack cocaine is different than being involved with marijuana? Do you remember that dialogue?
Objection relevant.
Sustained.
You eventually, as we get into the early morning hours of October 10th, make arrangements, as Mr. DeFore elicited from you, to spend the night with Ms. Lowe, correct?
Correct.
And that is because she typically didn't like to stay alone, correct?
It was because I was in town and didn't have a place to stay. I don't know her exact reasonings for it.
Did you ever tell Detective Wergensee or Detective Holtz that Stephanie Lowe had always told you she did not like to stay in her apartment alone? Did you ever say that?
That's possible.
You weren't lying to those detectives. You were telling the truth.
No, I was not lying. It's just a very long time ago, and I don't remember certain things.
What you do remember is she wanted you to spend the night with her that night, Miss Lowe, right? That you do remember.
She offered for me to stay there, yes.
It was a little bit more than offer. She actually wanted you to, right?
Yes.
And that worked for you, as I remember, because you needed a place to stay, right?
Correct.
When you made your way over to Miss Lowe's apartment, and you made those 4 telephone calls Mr. DeFore showed the jury after 2 o'clock a.m., you with me?
Yes.
Bar time, right?
Correct.
Denmark, you know that tavern on a block
By Stephanie's house, I believe.
east.
Correct.
At bar time, was it busy?
I don't know. That's not where I was at bar time.
Didn't ask you that. Do you remember Denmark being busy?
I don't recall at all. I wasn't there.
Did you have difficulty finding parking around Stephanie Lowe's apartment at any point in time?
No, I parked right on the side street when I got there. No issues.
At 2 a.m.
Yes.
You indicated, strike that, refresh my memory, the street level entry door to Miss Lowe's apartment, remember?
Yes.
At 2 o'clock when you got there, it was locked, right?
Yes.
In fact, it was deadbolted, correct?
Yes.
And you knew Stephanie Lowe always to keep that door deadbolted, correct?
I hadn't been there many times, so I don't know about always.
Do you recall telling Detective Worthensey that Stephanie Lowe always kept that door deadbolted when you spoke?
I don't recall.
You told Mr. DeFore today that you don't recall whether the lights were on or off in the apartment, correct?
Correct.
Do you remember telling Detective Worthensey that you took note that the lights were off upstairs?
I do not remember.
When you left that night, do you remember meeting up with a fellow by the name of Clifford Hayes?
Yes.
And you knew Clifford Hayes to be an associate of Kristopher Torgerson, correct?
Yes.
And you knew that Clifford Hayes would provide crack cocaine. I'm talking about.
Objection, Your Honor, relevant.
Well, if I could just, it has something to do with the defendant's conduct, based upon other cell phone records of the defendant. So this woman's coming from Florida. I trust I could elicit this information now.
You can approach, Your Honor.
Approach. We're going to excuse the jury for about a 5-minute break. Please be seated. There's a request to voir dire the witness to determine the foundation and relevancy of additional testimony.
I believe it will be Mr. Wilmot that would have to do it.
Okay.
I mean, it's his
Fair.
folks that are testifying.
I have no need to avoid ours, but
Well, Your Honor, unless they, what I'm asking is they voir dire the witness on the basis for her foundation so that we can determine whether or not
she has firsthand knowledge, or it's just what somebody's told her as it relates to this information, unless the defendant can establish, unless counsel can establish that she has firsthand knowledge, then it is not going to be, it's inadmissible because it has a proper foundation. So, and if Cart wants, I will voir dire her and I'll ask her. Did you know whether or not Clifford Hayes provided crack cocaine to the defendant as of October of 2010?
I did know he would come there for that. I never seen a physical exchange of that.
Okay. How did you know that he would go there for that?
Clifford was a friend. I knew a lot of the things that he did. We spoke about a lot of different things.
Was it things that you were told by him, by Clifford, or by the defendant?
By Clifford, yes, and I've been there when the defendant would stop there for a minute and leave right away afterwards. I just didn't watch the exchange.
I'm sorry, I should let you finish. Did you see what happened when the defendant would stop there for a minute and then leave?
No, it would be in another room.
Okay. I don't see where the foundation is, Your Honor. The foundation is hearsay, and
I would agree. This woman is testifying that she knows Clifford Hayes is this is what I understood her testimony just to be, that she understands Clifford Hayes is involved in cocaine trafficking, that Kristopher Torgerson would visit that residence very briefly, come and go. I think that certainly is sufficient evidence to establish that she is aware of likely what business transactions Mr. Torgerson and Mr. Hayes are involved in. And the purpose of this evidence is simply to corroborate the cell phone records of Mr. Torgerson around the time he supposedly killed Ms. Lowe, when he was communicating with Clifford Hayes. I submit to purchase crack cocaine.
Well, I think it's not objectionable to ask her if she saw him come over, but what transpired there, if she has no first-hand knowledge, that would not come in.
Am I allowed to ask her about the brief visits of Kristopher Torgerson there over time, and that Clifford Hayes lived approximately, I understand it, a half a mile from Stephanie Lowe? I'm allowed to ask those questions.
Any objection?
yes, Your Honor, relevance. I don't see what the relevance is. Again, whether or not he was trying to find crack cocaine or not is going to be pure speculation. The fact that he's calling him at that point in time, unless we have a witness that's going to testify that that's what he was doing, it's just calling for speculation. Secondly, I'm not sure what the relevance is, because his statements to various people was that he was trying to get the drugs. All right, if he was going out and he was calling people later on to try and get crack cocaine, I'm not sure what big deal that is, because of the fact of the matter is, we know he didn't get the drugs from Stephanie Lowe's, and he said to people, that's what I was trying to get. So if he was trying to find drugs later, well, yeah, maybe it's because he didn't get the drugs that he was trying to steal to start with.
I think these are matters of weight for the jury rather than admissibility.
And I think he's also, I think this all goes back to an attempt to backdoor in Mr. Hayes as a Denny suspect, which the court has specifically said no. And all it's going to do is confuse the jury as it relates to that.
Clifford Hayes is on the defense witness list. I certainly don't intend to claim that Clifford Hayes killed Stephanie Lowe. There's no backdooring here. It's a simple line of inquiry to try to corroborate the defendant's conduct so the jury can determine whether he was involved in that conduct as opposed to the homicide of Stephanie Lowe. I don't see how it confuses the jury. It's very, very simple.
If you're going to call Mr. Hayes, that's probably the best witness if you want to get that out to Mr. Hayes rather than the speculation here with this witness.
So am I allowed to ask any questions about Clifford Hayes at all?
If they're relevant.
So the answer is no.
If they're not relevant, that would be the
Okay,
correct answer.
I will move on to yet another line of inquiry, and we'll see where that goes. Thank you.
You may be seated.
Thank you, Felicia. Ms. Miller, do you know Kristopher Torgerson?
Not personally, no.
Do you remember telling Detective Wergency and/or Detective Foltz that you know that he floats around, your words? Remember that?
Right, correct.
And that you would see him everywhere, bars, people's houses. He was always looking for something. Remember that?
I recall saying that I had seen him several different places. Yes,
And that he would show up places you would be at to quickly pick up things and go, right?
correct.
He was a, quote, a bum that walked everywhere. Do you remember that? That's what you indicated?
Something along those lines, yes.
Nothing further of this witness.
Did you read it?
Nothing,
Then we should excuse.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Your Honor.
Excuse, thank you.
Thank you.
Who are you calling next?
Trenton Phillips. Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear that the testimony you want to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. Watch your step.
Appreciate it.
Could you please state your full name and spell your last name? Actually, why don't you spell both for the court reporter?
Trenton, Trinton, M, as in Mark, Phillips, Phillips.
Thank you. Mr. Phillips, I'm going to direct your attention to quite a few years ago, okay? First of all, I'll ask you, did you know a person by the name of Stephanie Love?
Yes, ma'am.
And how long did you know her in October of 2010?
3.5 years.
And how had you met Stephanie?
Through my girlfriend, Elissa. At the time, ex-girlfriend.
And during the time that you knew Stephanie, were you aware that she was living with a person named Eric Mahomes?
Yes.
And did that person go by a nickname that you were aware of?
Yeah, E.
At the time that you knew Stephanie in October of 2010, I think I said this, but I just want to make sure she was living with E,
Yes.
and that was on Thomas Street.
Yes.
When your knowledge of Stephanie, would you say that was a friendship, an acquaintance? What kind of a thing was that?
She was a friend of mine.
So directing your attention to October 9th of 2010, did you have some contact with Stephanie Lowe on that date?
Yes, I had seen her at the bar, and he was locked up, and she was stressing about not having any money, and he left her and didn't have anything, and he was locked up.
Were you aware through your friendship with Stephanie that she and E were involved in some sales of some illegal drugs?
I knew he was.
And what drugs, if you're aware, was he involved in selling?
Cocaine.
You indicated that you saw Stephanie Lowe on the evening of the 9th at the bar. Do you remember about what time that was?
I'm not sure. I know it was late. It was dark out, so.
And do you remember what bar it was?
I was at Rocks.
And is Rock spelled?
ROCS.
And when you were at Rocks, were you with some friends as well?
No, I was by myself.
And to your knowledge, was Stephanie there with anybody?
I don't recall, because me and her was talking in the parking lot outside.
And when you saw her at the bar, was that your first contact of the day that day?
Yes.
After you saw Stephanie at the bar, what happened next?
I went home. I think she called me and asked me if I can watch her dogs, because she was planning on going out of town.
For that weekend?
Well, that Sunday. I don't know what day exactly, but I'm pretty sure it was a Sunday, later on in the weekend.
Okay, because if we're talking about October 9th of 2010, if I told you that was a Saturday, would that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. And had you ever watched her dogs before?
No, ma'am.
Had she ever asked you before?
No, ma'am.
And you had a dog of your own at that point, right?
Yes.
And so what was your response when she asked you?
Your dogs will be appetizers for my dog, so I don't want to.
And were you aware of how involved with the dogs that Stephanie was?
Yeah.
Okay, so you didn't want anything bad?
No.
And so she called you, asked if you could watch the dogs, you politely declined.
Yeah, I said I couldn't do it.
And what happened next?
See, if you're saying that's Saturday, because when I spoke to her, it was the Friday that I spoke to her about the dogs.
Okay.
That Saturday, I ended up seeing her earlier Saturday.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit. If the time that she called and asked about the dogs, that was on October 8th?
Yeah, it was a Friday night.
Okay. And that was the night that you saw her at Rock?
Yes.
Okay. So then, did you still see her again later that night?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
I ended up seeing her the following day.
Okay, so let's go to Friday, October 8th of 2010 at Rocks. Is that the last time you see her on that Friday, or is that?
That Friday was the last time I seen her Friday, but I
Okay.
seen her Saturday.
Okay, let's talk about Saturday. When did you see Stephanie, if at all, on Saturday?
Well, my first contact with Stephanie Saturday, I was at home, and my neighbor, he happened to be wanting some crack. So I knew that she was in need to pay her bills, and so I'm like, well, let me call my friend, and I see if I cook you up. And I was trying to find me some marijuana at the time. So she said she could, so I drove to her house. That was early in the afternoon, like 2, 3 in the afternoon, something like that. I went in, talked to her and Cassie. She said she was going to go out later. I said, well, maybe we can go out and have a few drinks or something. But I had to take my girl dinner because she was working that night. I'm like, maybe I come pick you up and I go take my girl dinner. And then we can just go and sit down and have a couple drinks or whatever.
Okay, I'm going to stop you just so we can make sure that everybody's clear. So you had indicated that you had a neighbor who was interested in purchasing some crack.
Yes.
And when you said that you knew that Stephanie had been involved with, or Eric had been involved in the sale of some cocaine, were you referring to the same thing?
Yes.
Okay. And when you said that Stephanie was willing to provide that, was that because Eric was in jail?
Yes.
Okay.
I wouldn't have done it any other reason because me and her never really associated without Eric being present, out of respect factor because it was like my brother, But me and her didn't have ties through narcotics. We were friends.
Okay.
But at that time, I knew that she can help him and he can help her.
Okay. So you went over there, got what you were looking for, and then left?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So that is in the afternoon hours, and you saw Cassie Miller at her residence?
Yes, ma'am.
So if you left around that same time frame, 2 to 3 in the afternoon, you talked about possibly going out that evening?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So when was the next time, if at all, you saw or spoke to Stephanie on Saturday?
It was somewhere around 10 o'clock. I was going to take my girlfriend dinner, like I said, and I had to go through past Stephanie's home to get to my girlfriend's job. So I picked her up, went to my girlfriend's job. She sat in the truck. I dropped the food off, and then we ended up going to the Paradox.
And you knew Stephanie through your girlfriend, so there was no issue
Yeah,
with you hanging out with Stephanie?
Well, at the time, I had been cheating, so I didn't want the hassle. Being with a girl just by myself or her, I didn't want the problems. I was trying to reconcile my relationship and everything. So, but it was really no issue. She knew that me and Stephanie were cool.
Okay. So you picked Stephanie up, dropped off your girls some food, and then did you find a place to have a drink after that?
We went to Paradox.
Okay. And Paradox is another local bar here in Wausau?
Yes, ma'am.
Or it was at the time?
Yes.
Did you ride with anybody else to the Paradox?
No, I always ride by myself.
Okay. Except this time you had
Except I
Stephanie.
had Stephanie.
Did you meet up with some additional friends once you got to Paradox?
Some friends I know, Kevin and Mike Kyle, they were there.
Kevin and who?
Mike Kyle?
I'll spell this for you. It's Calvin Perkins. Is that Calvin?
Yes.
And that's KelvinPerkins. And you said
Mike Kyle.
And then last name Yang?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's MAI and then KOUYANG. Okay. And was the plan for you to meet up with those two,
No,
or was it just
it
random?
was just random.
So if you just dropped food off, you said your girlfriend at the time's name was Alyssa, right?
No, my present girlfriend. I met Stephanie in 2007 when I was with Elissa.
Oh, I understand. Okay, so what was your girlfriend's
Lindsay.
name? Lindsay, gotcha.
My present girlfriend.
And so if you just dropped food off for her, then you, what time, if you know, do you think you got to the pickup?
Somewhere around 10:30.
And it was 4 of you, did the 4 of you all kind of talk together?
Yeah, we were sitting at the bar talking. A mutual friend of ours was bartending, so we were all just talking, just having fun, whatever.
And at some point in time, was it determined that the 4 of you would leave that bar?
Yes,
And for what purpose was that?
to go smoke.
And when you say smoke, do you mean?
Weed, marijuana.
And where was it determined that the 4 of you would go do that?
Around the corner at Stephanie's house.
And when you say around the corner, is that
No.
walking distance?
Well, it could be walking distance, but it's like 6 blocks.
Okay. Did you walk or drive?
We drove.
And when you got to Stephanie's residence, do you remember if she used a key to get into the door?
No, I don't remember.
Do you remember about what time it was that you would have gotten to Stephanie's residence?
Around 11, maybe.
And about how long, if you know, did you spend at Stephanie's?
We sat there, we smoked a blunt. We was there for maybe about 30 minutes, maybe.
And what did, at some point in time, was it decided that you would leave Stephanie's residence?
Yeah, because she looked out the window when there was 2 police cars outside her house.
Not there for you?
Not there for us at all.
This is going to sound like a strange question. Did anybody use the bathroom while you were there?
I don't remember. But my Kyle, she was pregnant at the time, so I'm sure that she probably went in there.
That's And to your knowledge, you said E was locked up, so
Yes.
Stephanie was living there alone?
by herself.
So if you stayed at Stephanie's for about, I think you said a half an hour?
30, 45 minutes.
About 45 minutes. Where did you go after the Paradox, or after you were at Stephanie's?
We went back to the Paradox.
And did Stephanie come with you?
Yes.
And before you left to go back to the Paradox, had you helped Stephanie move anything, or was that at a later time?
That was during that time. She had asked me to put a safe in her closet. I'm like, why can't you do? She's like, I'm too short. I'm like, well, we the same height, you know, so what can I do? So she got me a chair.
So it was worth the risk for you.
So
Could you describe the safe a little bit?
just a black safe, key.
And was the safe open or closed?
It was closed.
And you considered Stephanie a friend, and you said E was like a brother. Had you seen that safe before?
No.
You had indicated that you had stopped earlier to get something for yourself and your friend. Had you seen the safe at that point in time?
No.
Did you have any knowledge of what was kept in that safe?
No.
And you said something about a closet. Can you kind of describe, and we're going to look at some pictures in a minute, was that closet in her bedroom?
Yes, ma'am.
And was the place that she had you put it, you indicated that you're the same height and she couldn't reach, was it way up high?
It was on the shelf and like towards the middle of the closet.
And you had to use a chair to reach it?
Yes.
Did she ever indicate to you why she wanted it back there?
No, ma'am.
Sorry, I got out of chronology for a second. So after that was done, was there anything else besides the four of you smoking and you helping her with the safe that you did at Stephanie's residence?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So you go back to the Paradox, all four of you?
No, Kevin and Mike Calvi ended up going to the Denmark across the street because it was a party, agents, a birthday party that night. It was real crowded.
And you, so it was just you and Stephanie?
Yes.
Okay. How long did you and Stephanie stay at the Paradox?
Not too long.
Okay. Stephanie was getting kind of annoyed?
Yeah.
Okay. Did she ask you to take her home?
Yes.
And you did so?
Yes.
Did you go back up with her into the residence?
Yes, because I had left my hat. When the four of us had left prior to that, I ended up leaving my hat in her house. So I was wondering why people was looking at me crazy. At the time I had hair. And I'm like, why everybody looking at me crazy? And I look in the mirror at the bar and my hair everywhere. And I'm like, oh, I left my hat. So I went back in and got my hat. And
Had you left your hat there because the squad cars were
yeah,
left in a hurry?
moving fast.
Okay. Because at that point in time, you and E and Stephanie not making great decisions, right?
Not at all.
So you went up and got your hat. When you were inside the residence that last time, do you remember if the lights in the residence were on or off?
They were on,
On?
except for the hallway light.
Okay. So the light in the hallway was not, but all the other ones?
Yes.
Okay, when you said the hallway, are you referring to the hallway once you're up inside the apartment or the stairwell?
Well, the stairwell hall, once you get to the door, it's a door at the bottom. And once you get in, it's a flight of stairs. And then it leads to her house. And that hallway light was out.
Okay, okay. When you left the apartment after you took Stephanie home, were you able to tell whether Stephanie locked the door or if the door was locked behind you?
Well, she had asked me to lock the door. And as I got down to the bottom of the stairs, I went to push the door closed, and she was pulling the door. And I was going to tell her, why you asked me to lock it, close it if you was going to be behind me. But she was on the phone talking to someone, and she just closed the door.
Did you know who she was talking to?
I'm assuming it was Alex.
Another friend?
Yes.
When, and this becomes important, so I apologize for the questions being so annoying, but when you said locked it, you said she pushed it shut. Were you aware as to whether or not she had turned a lock?
No.
Okay.
Well, that lock, it really didn't matter with that lock because you can slide your ID and the door was already broken. It was already broke. I think the only one that really locked was the one that initially, like, direct contact to her home.
The upstairs door?
Yes.
Okay. So the downstairs door, you had knowledge that you could get into that? Okay. Was that common knowledge?
Well, I know she had told me. I don't know if she told anyone else. And I didn't share it with nobody else until today.
Now, I mean, like I said, I'm going to go through a couple pictures with you. Were you aware of how long Stephanie had lived at that residence?
About 7 months, I'm thinking. It wasn't too long.
Did you say a couple months or 7 months?
7 months, I'm believing. It wasn't that long.
Because you were so close to the couple, were you there a lot?
On weekends when they had a party or something like that.
But you would you say that you were there enough that you would notice if things were awry when you were there?
Yeah.
And when you left Stephanie that night, early morning, first of all, I should ask, do you know about what time you left there?
When I dropped her back off, we wasn't at the Paradox long with me and her, so it was around 11:45 or something like that.
Okay. Sometime around midnight?
Sometime around there.
And did anything seem off to you?
No, I wasn't really looking for anything.
You didn't have any kind of weird bad feeling or anything?
On my way down the stairs, I did.
But nothing tangible that you could name that was out of place?
No.
I'm going to show you a couple pictures. Numbers on the thing there. 14, 16, 17, 22, 41, 51. Mayor, I'm going to show you, Mr. Phillips, what's been marked as number 14. And as we go through these, just let me know if these were taken after you were there, so let me know what looks different from when you were there, if anything, okay? This is exhibit number 14. If you could look at that and say what it is, or what room in the apartment, and what, if anything, looks different from when you were there.
The whole bedroom. The bedroom don't have any sheets, and it has sheets, clothes.
I'm sorry, I'm just having trouble here.
Could you
I said the bedroom. The bed don't have any sheets, comforter, and it had clothes and everything on it when I was there.
So, just to make sure I'm clear, in this picture, there's nothing on the bed?
No.
And when you were there, there were sheets,
Yes.
clothes?
Yes.
Okay. May I publish this?
Amen.
The next photo that I'm going to hand you, I'd ask you to describe what we're looking at and what, again, if anything, looks different than from the time that you were there. This is 16.
This is her closet. The chair not there that I stood on. Everything on the hangers look about the same. I just can't see the top, the shelf.
And is that the same closet that you helped Stephanie put the safe?
Yes.
Notice the closet? You can see the screen behind you.
Yes.
I'm now going to show what's been marked as Exhibit 17. And specifically that end table in the picture. Do you see that?
Yes.
Was that bottle of alcohol that's sitting on that end table, do you recall if that was there when you were there?
No, I don't recall.
Is there anything else in that picture besides the bed that you mentioned before looked different from when you were there?
Everything is the same as, not the same as when I left, but just the bed, and I don't know if any curtains or anything was on the window.
I'm sorry?
I said I don't know if any curtains were on the window.
I'm going to skip 22. And then just number 41. Do you recognize that as the outside door of Stephanie's residence?
Yes.
And is that how it looked when you were there?
Yes.
And then finally, showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 52. Do you recognize that as the carpeting in Stephanie's bedroom?
Yes.
And is there some discoloration to the floor in that picture?
Yes.
Do you recall if that discoloration to the floor was present when you were in her bedroom?
Was never there.
It was never there?
It wasn't there.
Thanks.
And those exhibits that I used, I only ended up using 4 that I mentioned, 14, 16, 41, and 52. I asked that those be moved into evidence along with the other photos that I used before.
No objection, but if I could just get the numbers one more time.
14, 16, 41, 52.
Okay, those will be received in evidence. And were your earlier photos moved or not?
I didn't move those, and I'd like to do that at this time where we can do that later.
As long as we know the numbers of which ones you're moving.
Four, 6, 9, and 12. So.
Any objection?
I'm just going to look again. None on 4,
6,
none on, no objection on 6,
9,
no objection on 9,
12.
no objection on 12.
Okay, those 4 will be received as well.
Are there any other questions for you at this time?
Cross?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Phillips.
Good afternoon.
When you went to the apartment with Mr. Perkins and Miss Yang and Miss Lowe to smoke the blunt, you with me?
Yes.
And that's marijuana. That has nothing to do with crack cocaine, right?
No.
All right. That's the time when Miss Lowe asked you to put the safe up, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember where the safe was before she asked you to put it up?
No, because we weren't in our room. We were in the kitchen, and she called me to call me to our room.
Okay. And she had you put it on like a top shelf of that closet that we saw, right?
Yes.
But that picture that we saw, that closet picture,
Can I folks look at the exhibit? Thanks, Joe.
They're the ones right on the edge there, they're turned right side up.
Thank you. The closet, which is Exhibit 16, we don't see that shelf.
It's cut off. I don't know why.
Say?
I said it's cut off the picture, but it's there.
Okay. And there's like little shutter doors up there, isn't there?
I
for that area?
don't recall if it was
All
a
right.
shutter door.
Did she ask you, Mr. Phillips, if you remember, to hide it up there?
No. She said, would you put this up here, please?
She didn't ask you to put it behind anything?
No.
And you didn't, such that when you were done with that chair task, it was just right there in plain view, the safe, right?
Well, I pushed it back. I wouldn't put it like right where you can, I have common sense to know, so I wouldn't put something up, push it back. Don't leave it right in the front.
Did you know what was in it?
No, didn't ask. Wasn't my concern.
Did you close the shutter?
It wasn't my home to be touching her stuff like that. I did what she asked me.
You've seen the dogs up there in the past, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you saw a dog crate or kennel up in the apartment in the past, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever see that outside the apartment?
No.
I mean, how many times have you been over there? More than 5 or less than 5 times prior to October 10th?
More than 10.
A lot. All right. Remember the dining room area where they had a dining room table just adjacent to the kitchen with 3 chairs?
Yes.
All right. Tell me if you remember this. Was there a rug or carpet under there?
I don't recall.
Okay. Remember ever seeing any coinage in a container there, like Tupperware or anything of that nature? A lot of loose change in a Tupperware container? Don't recall?
Don't recall.
Fair enough. When Miss Ayala was talking to you about the bathroom, you indicated, I think she was asking you about the toilet seat, right?
She asked me had anyone used the bathroom.
Right, and you said, well, Miss Yang was pregnant, she probably did, right?
Might have, yes.
But do you remember telling Detective Holtz and Wogernies that what he did with the seat, whether after he did his business he put it back up or not?
20 to 35 minutes, you got to get a bathroom to air out. I didn't go 20 to 35 minutes. You have to give the bathroom to air out. I didn't go in there behind him.
Wasn't the answer I was thinking, but it still helps. So you don't know?
No.
There's the bedroom that you looked at some pictures of. That was the bedroom you knew shared by Eric Mahomes, E, and Stephanie Lowe, right?
Yes.
Right across from that bedroom, you knew there to be a spare bedroom, right?
Yes.
That spare bedroom had dual purposes, if you remember. Sometimes for kids to stay, right?
Yes.
And sometimes for people to go in there and use drugs, like marijuana.
Yes.
All right. And primarily because of the latter reason, you remember that door was typically, actually you said, always shut,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
When you went to any of your 2 or 3 trips to Miss Lowe's place that day, you with me?
Mm-hmm.
Was that door to that spare bedroom always closed?
Yes.
Even on your last trip, it was closed?
That one I can't tell you because, like I said, I went in there to get my hat. Me and her didn't conversate because she was on the phone. And
do you remember telling detectives back closer in time in the incident that you remembered that door being closed on your last visit?
no, I don't remember.
Do you remember telling well, you told Miss Ayala today that as you were leaving the last time Miss Lowe's apartment, you with me?
Yes.
Well, you went and got your hat that was by the couch in the living room, right?
Yes.
She was annoyed, so you took her home, right?
Yes.
You had a bad feeling, you told Miss Ayala, right?
For what reason, I have no idea.
Did you
It wasn't for her. I thought somebody was looking for me. I had a feeling like I was in trouble. Like somebody was following me. I had a bad feeling. So I was like, well, maybe because I'm inebriated a little bit. And I didn't want to tell her this to frighten her. But I kind of wish I had. Because maybe she would have left back out with me.
Do you remember telling detectives back years ago that you were actually had a feeling that somebody might have been hiding in that spare bedroom?
My assumption with this came all about when all this arose. When all this came about, I'm like, well, only thing I could think of, if somebody was in there, they would be in that room because I left something in that room and they never went in there for 2 months and I knew it was there. And on the 3rd month, I went and it was still where I left it at. And I'm like, y'all never went in here? They're like, no, we don't go in there.
And do you remember, here's my specific question, when you were interviewed close in time, but by Detective Wogernies and Holtz, all the way back in 2010, that on that particular night, you had a sense somebody might be hiding in that bedroom?
I didn't say hiding in that bedroom. I was looking under the door. I was looking for a shadow under the door.
You did? You looked under that door for a
No,
shadow?
the downstairs door leading out the hallway because it was dark in the hallway.
Didn't you tell the detectives you were concerned about what might be in that spare bedroom or no?
Never.
Okay. Fair enough. Throughout your time with Miss Lowe, let me back up. When you were leaving the apartment, you closed the door and Miss Lowe shut it behind you, right?
She was pulling it closed as I was pushing it shut.
And I guess I'm unclear about your testimony. Did she deadbolt that door? That
Like I said, I'm not sure what she did.
Well, let me see if this refreshes your recollection. Remember meeting with Detective Mary Wogernies on October 11, 2010, which would be the morning after you left the apartment. You told her, when you left the apartment, Stephanie told him to lock the door on the street. But when he was closing the door, Stephanie was pulling the door shut and locking the deadbolt behind him. Do you remember telling her that?
No, but I know she was closing the door.
I'm concerned about the deadbolt. Did you tell Detective Wogernies that she deadbolted the door?
I didn't tell them anything. I just told them that I was responding to her, asking her, why would you ask me to lock the door if you're going to be closing it? And she shut the door.
Okay. Was there a deadbolt on the bottom door?
I don't recall. But at the time, I'm telling you, a deadbolt would have been no use. Because if you can use your card, your ID to get in the door, a deadbolt.
Well,
So it couldn't have been a deadbolt there.
Okay.
Because I don't think an ID would push a deadbolt lock.
Well, did you get in with an ID before?
Yes.
And you think it was deadbolted when you did that?
I can't see an ID penetrating the deadbolt lock.
I'm going to show you, or we're showing the jury, you've had a chance to look at it before, exhibit number 4. Exhibit number 41. You see the handle there, right? You're going to have to answer.
Yes, I see a handle.
You see a locking mechanism above that, right?
Yes.
But you don't know whether that was a deadbolt.
I don't think she used it because, like I said, when she told me to go there, when she was on her way behind us, that wasn't locked.
When she left, when you were leaving, you mean?
No, when she told me to meet her at her house and use my ID to get in because I was going to be there before her.
But I'm talking about when you went and got your hat.
I don't recall her locking no door. I just remember her pulling it shut.
Got it. You were asked about how cautious, remember, let me first ask you if you remember, was Miss Lowe pretty cautious about not opening doors for anybody?
I mean, if she didn't know you, she wasn't going to open no door. And if she was in fear that she was going to do something to her, she wasn't going to open no door.
And in fact, you remember telling and interviewing detectives that Miss Lowe was, quote, cautious as hell and would not open any doors for anybody. Remember that? Is that true?
I mean, the lifestyle she was living, you would be cautious as well.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, with her man selling narcotics, you never know. Friends aren't always friends.
You didn't know she was selling.
No.
Well, then why did you call her to get Chuck Rogers a little bit of crack cocaine?
Because I knew that she was able to get access.
When you went over there to get the crack cocaine for Chuck Rogers, where did she get it from, Miss Lowe?
She had it.
Had it in her hand waiting for you?
No, in her bra.
Where did that transaction take place?
Me, her, and Cassie was at that dining room table that you spoke about.
Cassie was there?
She told you that, right? I told you that as well.
When you went back to get your hat, what time do we have that again, Mr. Phillips, again, roughly?
11:45, midnight.
You took note of a 2010 Yukon vehicle that you'd never seen before, parked right at the street level door of Miss Lowe's apartment, right?
Objection.
I don't know. It's. Oh, sorry.
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
Various persons tried to implicate you in something happening to Miss Lowe in this case, right?
Objection, relevance.
Judge, if I could just, let me say this. People falsely, how about this, if this is fair? People falsely tried to say you had something involved with this, right?
Again, objection, Mr. Relevance. Mr. Phillips is not a party.
I'm very aware, and I'm just establishing that he's been unjustly accused.
Sustained.
The cocaine that you provided Charles Rogers was of bad quality, right?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
Okay, I'll make an offer of proof outside the presence of the jury, but I'd like to continue.
Sustained.
There's basically 4 clubs back in 2010 for the hip-hop crowd in Wausau, right?
I don't know.
Well, you know about Rocks. That's a hip-hop club, right?
I attend all bars. It's just not hip hop for me.
Okay.
I'm multifaceted, sorry.
Breakaway and Bruisers and Rocks.
Multifaceted. I do a lot of things. I don't just stick to one thing.
Breakaway, Bruisers, Rocks, and Paradox is where a lot of common people go, right? The same people go, right?
Excuse me?
Breakaway, Bruisers, Rocks, and Paradox are all bars, kind of hip-hop bars, where a lot of the same people go, right?
Everybody go there.
They're all within a few miles of one another, right?
Being the Wausau so small, all the bars are close.
Were you driving a silver Chevy Trailblazer on October 2010?
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you, sir.
May I redirect?
Oh. Do you sometimes use the word deadbolt and lock interchangeably?
Excuse me?
Attorney Wilmot made reference to the fact that in one of the interviews with one of the detectives early on in this case, the word deadbolt had been used. Do you sometimes use the word deadbolt and lock interchangeably?
I don't know. Not really.
Okay. So if you would have said deadbolt, you would have meant deadbolt, but you don't think you said deadbolt?
No.
All right,
Anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Tom?
Thank you.
Your next witness?
Mai Yang.
you solemnly swear that the testimony about to give the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Watch yourself. I have to see. You can adjust the microphone so you can speak right into it, however you prefer. Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sorry, the courtroom's a little confusing. I'll be asking you questions first.
Okay.
Could you please state your full name and spell it for the record?
Mai Yang, MAIKAOYANG.
And is it okay if I call you Mai or Ms. Yang?
Mai, it's fine.
Mai, do you remember being acquainted with a young woman by the name of Stephanie Lowe in October of 2010?
Yes.
And how did you know her?
She was introduced by another friend, so an acquaintance is what I would call her.
Prior to October 9th of 2010, had you two ever hung out or partied or anything like that before?
Like I've met her at the bar several times, but never like really hung out like that.
Not someone you would call or
No.
spend time with? And when you say met at the bar, was it one bar in particular that you would like to hang out at, or was it more than one?
It was several bars. I ran into her in different bars.
On the night of October 9th of 2010, were you involved in a romantic relationship with a person named Calvin Perkins?
Yes.
And in fact, are you still with him?
Yes.
And on that date in October, had the two of you sort of run into Trenton Phillips at Rocks?
I believe it was at the
Oh,
Paradox.
thank you for correcting me.
Yep.
I have my bars listed and I looked at the wrong one.
Okay.
Do you remember about what time it was that you saw Trenton Phillips at Paradox?
When we initially saw them? No, I don't remember.
Was it late in the evening?
Yeah.
And was he with Stephanie Lowe?
Yep.
And you would have been with Mr. Perkins?
Yep.
At the time that you were spending time with Mr. Perkins and that you saw Trenton Phillips and Stephanie Lowe, were you pregnant at that time?
Yes.
And were you sort of acting as designated driver for Mr. Perkins?
Yep.
At some point in time at the Paradox, when you were there with Mr. Perkins and saw Trenton Phillips with Stephanie, was it decided that the four of you would kind of hang out together for a while?
Well, when we first got there, then they talked, I don't know about whatever, and then Calvin had said to me that they wanted to go back to Stephanie's house to go smoke. So,
Had you been to Stephanie's house before that?
no.
When you arrived at Stephanie's residence, do you remember if Stephanie used a key to get in, or if the door was open or locked?
No, I don't. It's like a narrow, it was kind of like a narrow, like, stairway. So we all were kind of lined up. I was on the bottom, so.
So on the bottom, there's a door?
We took a door up, and then it was really dark, so it was like a stairway up. And then I don't know how she got in, though, if she used a key or.
Because four people, you're in the lab.
Yeah, so I was in the last, so.
But just so I have a clear mental picture, at the residence you were at, there's a bottom door, a narrow stairwell, and then a top door?
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
So once you get inside, where did the four of you gather?
There, to your right, there's like a small kitchen, and then like a dining room, and then the living room. So we were like in the, I guess, the dining room area.
Were the dogs home?
I believe so, yes.
And when you were there, and again, this may seem like a strange question, do you know if you or anyone else used the bathroom for the time that you were visiting?
I did.
Did you see anybody else?
No.
There's been some testimony in the dining area,
No.
so you would have had no reason or cause to be in her bedroom at all.
No.
Were you aware of Trenton helping her move a safe at any point in time?
Well, I went to the bathroom, so like her bedroom door is like you have to pass her bedroom door to go to the bathroom. So like as I was walking, I just kind of glanced at those two, so they were in the room. So what I had seen was, Trent was in the room, but she was reaching up, I think it was like a closet or something, with a box. So I can't remember if she was pulling it down or putting it away.
And that box, did you have any idea what kind of a box it was?
No.
Didn't know what was in it?
No.
And while you were at the apartment, were the others smoking, for lack of a better way to put it?
Yep.
While you were at the apartment, did you guys do anything else while you were there besides smoke, use the bathroom?
No.
When you looked, kind of on accident, it sounds like, into the bedroom, were you able to see the bed?
Yes.
Was there bedding and sheets on it at that time?
Yes.
At some point in time, you all decided to leave to go back to the bars?
Yep.
Do you remember, kind of a two-part question, while you were there, were all the lights on in the apartment? If you know?
Like before we left, or?
I guess while you were there is the first part of the question.
I think the only lights that were on was the dining room light.
Are you aware as to if the lights were all turned off as you were leaving?
No, I don't know.
As you were leaving, do you have any knowledge as to whether or not the door was locked, either with a, like one of those twist doorknobs or a deadbolt or a key or anything like that?
I do not know.
And after you left, it sounds like you and Calvin went to the Denmark as parted ways with Trenton and Stephanie?
Yep, we did.
Did you have any other contact with Stephanie at all that evening?
No.
Did you know Kristopher Torgerson at all throughout the time?
I have met him at the bar before, but I don't know him.
Is the person that you know to be Kristopher Torgerson here in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Stipulate to identification.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I have for you.
Okay.
Russ?
Briefly. Good afternoon.
Hi.
After the people were smoking at Miss Lowe's, Mr. Phillips and Miss Lowe returned to Paradox, and you and Mr. Perkins went to the Denmark, right?
Yes.
And wasn't the Denmark having a big party that night, a big birthday party for somebody related to the owner, I think? Does that ring a bell?
No.
Was the Denmark pretty crowded? Do you remember?
No, I don't remember.
Okay. That's all I got.
Okay.
You were there?
No, and my understanding is she can be released from her subpoena.
Oh, yes.
Okay, you are excused. You don't have to come back.
Okay.
Do you want to go to the witness order or you have about 2:30?
I'd like to keep going.
That's fine with me.
Are you shorter? These going to be shorter witnesses?
This one isn't too long. It's Jacob Alby.
Okay.
The one following that may be somewhat longer.
Okay, we'll take a break after Officer Alby.
They would call Officer Jacob Alby.
right there. Raise your right hand. I solemnly swear that the testimony about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
Speak into the mic, please, and speak up. Okay.
Could you state your name for the record, please, and spell your name for the court reporter?
My name is Officer Jacob Alby. Last name is spelled A-L-B as in boy, E-E.
And how are you employed?
I'm employed through the Wausau Police Department as a community resource officer.
And how long have you been employed with the Wausau Police Department?
About 9.5 years.
And were you still employed on October 10th of 2010?
I was.
And in what capacity were you working as of October 10th of 2010?
I was working as a patrol officer.
And as a patrol officer, you'd be in uniform in a regular marked squad car, is that correct?
I was.
And as of October 10th of 2010, what shift were you working?
I was working a third shift.
And so were you working in the early morning hours of October 10th, 2010?
I was.
And do you recall if you were dispatched to a call somewhere in the early morning hours of that date that took you past 701 West Thomas Street?
I was.
And when you were going to on that call, were you operating with your lights and sirens?
I was.
And was your squad equipped with a dash camera?
It was.
And was that dash camera operating?
It was.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Officer Alby, I'm showing you what has been marked for identification as exhibit number 2. Does that appear to be a copy of the recording from that dash camera, according to at least what it's designated as?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd move the admission of exhibit 2.
No objection.
Exhibit 2 is received.
And can we switch to number 2, I believe it is, right? Your Honor, I have a clip that the whole video, which is relatively long. We have a relatively short clip that I'd like to play from that. It's about a minute long, if that's okay with the court.
That's fine. Just give us the start time and the end time.
All right. Thank you.
Let's try it one more time at the start.
And the building just before the end of that and went past, that would be the 701 West Thomas Street.
It would be.
All right. And may I approach again, Your Honor?
You may.
Showing you what has been marked for identification as Exhibit 3. Does that appear to be a screenshot from that?
It does.
And your video is timestamped?
It is.
And as far as you know, was your video relatively accurate as far as the time as of October 10th of 2010?
Yes.
All right. And what is the timestamp on that?
It is October 10th, 2010 at 2:09 and 51 seconds in the morning.
All right. And that shows the residence at 701 West Thomas, correct?
Yes.
All right. And it appears, and actually, Your Honor, I move the admission of Exhibit 3 and ask to publish it at this point.
No objection.
Okay, it's received as evidence, and you may show it to the jury.
So this is the photo that we were just talking about, Officer Alby?
Yes.
All right. And it appears in that photo that there is a light on in one of the windows on the second floor, correct?
Yes.
All right. And as far as you know, and you were later at the location the next day again, correct?
Yes.
All right. Does that appear to be a light in the apartment of Stephanie Lowe?
To my knowledge of the apartment, yes.
All right. Thank you. Now, were you working again the next early morning hours? That would be October 10th into October 11th of 2010.
I was.
All right. And at that time, were you asked to go to the 701 West Thomas Street residence?
I was.
And why were you asked to go there?
I was asked to be there for scene security.
Right. And do you recall who you took over from?
Officer Melinda Pauls.
And did you stay there until somebody relieved you?
Yes.
Right. And while you were there, did you watch to make sure whether or not anybody else was going in or out of that residence?
I did.
Did you see anybody enter or leave that residence while you were there that early morning hours?
Nobody entered or left the residence while I was there.
And you said you were there for scene security. Can you explain to the jury what scene security is?
Basically, I'm there to make sure we preserve the evidence, that nobody's entering or exiting and tampering with any evidence while I am basically securing the scene, preventing that from happening.
And nobody did that?
Correct.
And did you stay there continuously until somebody relieved you?
I did.
And once that officer, whoever it was, relieved you, you left?
I did.
Do you recall who the officer was at this time?
I believe it was Officer Stephen Kickhaver.
Okay. I don't have any other questions for Officer Alby. Thank you.
Brief.
Go ahead.
I just want to talk to you about the, good afternoon, sir. I just want to talk to you about the call, or the pass-by of Miss Lowe's apartment at approximately 2:10 a.m. the morning before you had to do the scene security.
Okay.
All right. And did you eventually get, I know you did scene security for the apartment, did you go upstairs though and check out the layout?
I don't recall ever being inside. I might have been for previous calls, but not that day.
All right, what I'm asking is, you know the lights that we see are illuminated during your call in that upper unit of Miss Lowe?
Yes.
You said, well, those are lights on in her apartment. Do you think that's do you know what room in her apartment?
I do not.
Did it look like it was the windows, that there were sets of windows and it looked like it was like a second set of windows? Or don't you know?
I don't know.
That were illuminated is what I'm asking. You don't know?
I don't know.
And I don't know if you know this or you don't remember that drive-by. This dispatch was just brought to your attention to say, hey, this could be important, right?
Reviewing the video, I remember driving on Thomas Street, but I don't recall anything about the residence.
Because what I want to ask you is about whether there was any window treatment on those windows, blinds or drapes, drawn or not drawn.
I couldn't tell you.
All right. But if something sinister is going on in that room at 2:10 a.m., that illuminated room, is viewable by anybody directly across the street with a line of sight, right?
I don't believe the other side has a second-story residence, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay. And you certainly couldn't tell whether whether any of the windows that were illuminated were open or closed. You don't know or don't remember or didn't see.
I could not answer that, and I don't know.
Thank you, sir.
Any regret?
None, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. You may step down. And we will take a break until 3 o'clock. Amy, have you seen it? Before we take a break, you want to give me the lay of the land for the rest of the afternoon?
Here, we have 3 witnesses left that we're planning on, that was trying to get through today. That could be a little bit optimistic with Cross.
Okay.
But that's all right.
Okay. Any other matters that we have to take up right now?
Very briefly, the court sustained 2 objections during the course of the defense's cross-examination of Trenton Phillips. One was his notice, observation of a 210 Yukon vehicle parked in front of Miss Lowe's residence when he returned her to the address of her residence. The other was my question about whether the crack cocaine they received from Miss Lowe and delivered to Charles Rogers is, as is found in the police reports, bad crack cocaine that Mr. Rogers complained about. It would just seem to me, those 2 questions I certainly don't think implicate any third-party perpetrator evidence. I think they simply go to the burden of proof here, providing the possibility for other unknown suspects. That's certainly not specifically Denny evidence or uninvestigated matters. And I think that in conjunction with some of the other matters that the court has precluded the defense from eliciting, this amounts to a violation of the defendant's Sixth Amendment right to confrontation and fair trial and to present a defense. And on that basis, at this time, I'll move for mistrial.
Good night. Anything else?
Do you want your response?
If you want to put a response on the record, you can.
But just with the mention of Mr. Rogers and him not being pleased with the drugs that he got, I think that could only be used to perhaps show why he'd have a motive to do something. And so I do think it falls under the third-party liability. So I just wanted to put that on there.
Okay. And so let's be relevant. And from what I understand of the theory of the case, I don't see the relevancy.
If bad crack cocaine is being sold, that opens up a host of possibilities as to who's responsible for this woman's death. And I think that's certainly fair for the defense to elicit.
Okay. Good after 3 o'clock.
I'm going to put this downstairs to see what do you think?
I'm hoping that the car chair. I don't know. Can this start right now? Doesn't have a lot of things there. Okay. He touched the bed. Brittany, it's going to be him. Then her. Then anyone. Hopefully. And I don't know if we'll get through all these. She's done. First with me.
Why don't we do this? Let me show you what I did. I got it. Helpful on that. Alby?
We sit down.
What if we did this kind of stipulation? Just do this.
I would have no problem with that. When you run if I did that.
I don't know what's going on.
I don't know what time Paul's got there. We could ask her. This guy keeps getting the phone.
So you could never call. You could never.
Yeah, because King Rush would be the focus of the scene.
Somebody did something else.
His school did something. I know that Dick was